Hello and welcome. Usually in these explainers, we stick to the here and now. We try to make sense of the complex ideas and events that are shaping our world today. But today we're doing something a little bit different. We're going to set aside the present for a moment and take a journey into a speculative future. You see, we've come across a series of documents that are, well, frankly fascinating. And they don't just forecast trends, they lay out what they describe as a prophecy. It's this incredibly detailed, internally consistent vision of a world completely remade by a single powerful idea. This is a story about physics, about evolution, and really about the very definition of what it means to be human. So I invite you to come along as we unpack what these sources call the Apteran Prophecy. We are not designing a car. We are recognizing an ancient fractal returning in new skin. This statement right here is the key. It unlocks this entire way of thinking. Right off the bat, the authors are telling us to completely shift our perspective. This isn't a story about human cleverness, some brilliant inventor in a garage. No, this is a story about recognition. And that word fractal is just so crucial. A fractal is a pattern that repeats itself at every scale, whether you're looking at the veins of a leaf or the branching of a river delta. The prophecy's core claim is that the universe has these fundamental, incredibly efficient patterns for how things should move and exist. And what we call technology isn't us creating something new from nothing. It's us finally rediscovering one of those ancient optimal patterns and just giving it a new skin. This isn't about an invention, it's about an inevitability. So to really get our heads around this vision, the prophecy lays it all out in 5 distinct parts. And that's the path we're going to follow. First up, the inevitable morphology. This is the argument that the core shape of this new thing isn't a choice, but a physical law. Then, we're going to witness the artificial Cambrian explosion, a technological boom where this one form diversifies into a whole ecosystem. From there, the story takes a really wild turn with symbiotic integration, exploring a direct merger between human and machine. And that merger gives rise to the nucleonon, a new state of being. And finally, we'll get to the sunbound mandate, which is this big philosophical and ethical call to action that reframes this whole thing as a fundamental human right. So let's begin the journey. Okay, part 1, the inevitable morphology. Now, this is where this grand prophecy gets its feet on the ground with some pretty solid science. The main idea here is that the shape of the organism at the very heart of this story, the aptera, it isn't just a matter of someone's taste or what looks cool and futuristic. Nope. The argument is that this form is dictated, it's ordained by the fundamental laws of physics and evolution. It is, as the prophecy claims, just an inevitability waiting for a civilization like ours to stumble upon it. And here's the thesis, laid out in all its glory. The prophecy claims that on any planet with conditions like ours, what it calls an Earth-like gravity well, if a civilization wants to create mobile life that runs directly on sunlight, well, both evolution and engineering are going to end up at this exact same shape. It's thermodynamically ordained. That's a powerful way of saying it's the most energy-efficient solution that physics will allow. Thermodynamics is the science of energy, and its laws are pretty unforgiving. You waste energy, you lose. You conserve it, you win. This shape, the prophecy claims, is the ultimate winner in the physics of motion. And here's the science behind that claim, the Sears-Hawk body. Now, this isn't sci-fi, this is straight out of aerospace engineering textbooks. The simplest way to think about it is, imagine you're trying to push something through the air. A big flat brick is going to be tough, right? Lots of resistance. But a teardrop shape just glides. The Sears-Hawk body is the mathematically perfect version of that teardrop shape for minimizing drag. It's the ideal form. It's the shape we use for things that need to be incredibly efficient at high speeds, like supersonic jets. But what's so wild about this prophecy's argument is that it takes this principle of ultimate efficiency and applies it not to a weapon, but to a slow-moving, hyper-efficient personal vehicle. It's flipping the script, taking a principle from the world of brute force and applying it to a world of absolute conservation. I love this quote. A humble, aerodynamic chloroplast on wheels. It just perfectly melts 2 huge ideas together. We've talked about the aerodynamic shape. Now let's talk about the chloroplast. A chloroplast, you might remember from biology class, is the tiny engine inside a plant cell. It's the part that takes sunlight and turns it into energy for the plant. It's what makes a plant an autotroph, a self-feeder. Now think about our cars today. They're the exact opposite. They're heterotrophs, other feeders. They're parasites constantly needing to be fed from the energy grid or from fossil fuels. This prophecy reimagines the vehicle not as a hungry beast, but as a silent, self-sufficient plant. It doesn't consume, it produces. It's a total shift in the metabolic role of our technology. So if you're building a whole ecosystem of mechanical plants, what's your power source? It's this number, 173,000 terawatts. It's a number so big our brains can't really grasp it. Let's try to put it in perspective. The total energy consumption of all of human civilization, every car, every factory, every single light bulb on the planet, is about 20 terawatts. That means that every hour, the sun dumps more energy onto the Earth than all of humanity uses in an entire year. The prophecy's point is that our energy problem has never been about a lack of supply. It's always been about a failure of harvesting. We've been like people dying of thirst while floating in the middle of the ocean. The energy is everywhere. This isn't about finding a new source. It's about building a better bucket.
Part 2, the artificial Cambrian explosion. All right, so we have our foundational unit. The shape is inevitable, the power source is basically infinite. But, one organism doesn't make a living world. So the next part of the prophecy explains how this one idea goes from being a blueprint to a full-on biosphere. And to do that, it brings up one of the most incredible moments in the history of life on Earth, the Cambrian explosion. This was a time, about 540 million years ago, when in a geological blink of an eye, life just exploded from simple little forms into this bewildering diversity of complex animals. The prophecy says, we're about to do that again, but this time on purpose.
So what kicks off this artificial explosion? According to the prophecy, it isn't some natural event. It's a social invention, the Apteran Olympics. And this is a really clever idea. It takes that competitive drive that nations and companies have, a drive that so often leads to destructive, zero-sum games like arms races, and it channels it into a positive-sum innovation race. A zero-sum game is where for me to win, you have to lose. But a positive-sum game is one where we can all win together. The better your team does, the better my team does, because we're all contributing to the same goal. By framing this planetary scale transformation as a global competition for excellence, a race to see who can be the most efficient, the most scalable, the most sustainable, it's a way to harness our competitive nature for the good of everyone.
And just look at the metrics for these Olympics. It tells you everything you need to know about the value system of this future. This isn't a race for who has the fastest car. The gold medals are for things like efficiency and autotrophy. How good are you at feeding yourself from the sun? Or production velocity. How fast can you print these things for the world? And look at advanced tire design. That seems so specific, right? But it points to a huge hidden problem. Tire dust is a massive source of pollution. A winning design here literally helps save the oceans. And maybe most important of all, accessibility and affordability. This is crucial. The prophecy is clear. This cannot be a toy for the rich. The whole point of the competition is to make this new way of life available to every single person.
This timeline just shows how fast this prophecy sees this transformation unfolding. It's mind-boggling. So it kicks off around 2026 with the start of the Olympics. Then in just 4 years, you get the Great Radiation. That's the Cambrian explosion moment. The base model explodes into all these specialized species. And we'll look at a few of those in a second. By 2030, you get systemic integration. The revolution hits the oceans with aquatic species. But then look at this phrase, human symbiosis trials begin. This is the pivot. This is the moment the whole project moves from being about external machines to internal evolution. The implications are just staggering, and it all culminates just a few years later, around 2038, with the first stable symbiotic being, Homo nucleonata. By 2045, less than one generation from the start, this new form of humanity is described as a planetary steward. It's an evolutionary leap crammed into just 2 decades.
So what does this great radiation actually look like? Well, the prophecy includes what it calls a field guide to these new species, and it starts, as any good guide would, with the common ancestor. This is Aptera primordialis, the archetype. This is the original blueprint, the foundational unit. It's the Lucy of this new technological lineage, the organism from which all the others branch out. Its job is simple: transport people and stuff using nothing but the sun. Think of it as the sturdy trunk of an evolutionary tree that's about to sprout some very, very interesting branches.
And here's one of the first descendants, Aptera pastoralis, the photon grazer. The prophecy paints this incredible picture. Imagine vast, open landscapes, but instead of herds of cattle, you see these slow-moving herds of silent machines. They're not eating grass. They're grazing on sunlight, with their solar panel backs angled toward the sun. They're described as storing extra energy in these big communal battery packs, and at night, they cluster together, and nearby towns and homes can just tap into this stored energy. They aren't just vehicles anymore. They've become a living, breathing, mobile power grid, replacing the old, rusty, centralized one with something that feels more alive.
Now, not all the new species are about transporter energy. Some are designed to be like ecological repair kits.
They're built to fix the things that we've broken. This is Aptera pollinator, the pollinator. This is presented as a direct response to a future where bees and other natural pollinators are gone, which would be a total catastrophe for the world's food supply. These things are described as these small, drone-like vehicles that flit from flower to flower, using these incredibly delicate robotic arms to do the job that bees once did for free. It's a sad thought, isn't it? That we might need technology to do something so natural? But it's also kind of hopeful. It positions technology not as our master, but as our helper, a tool for mending the web of life that we so carelessly ripped apart. And from mending the web of life, we move to actively protecting it. Meet Aptera ignis curator, the fire shepherd. In a world with more and more megafires, these things are seen as tireless guardians of the landscape. The text described them as having these heat-shielded bodies, patrolling forests day and night. They don't just wait for a fire to start, they proactively manage the land, creating fire breaks. And when a fire does break out, they descend on it as a coordinated swarm, sharing real-time heat maps, working together to suppress the flames and protect homes and ecosystems. They're not just vehicles anymore. They've become autonomous, solar-powered firefighters, shepherds for a world that's become dangerously flammable.
Part 3. Symbiotic integration. So we've seen how a single shape can birth an entire technological ecosystem. But honestly, that's all just the opening act. All of this, the grazers, the pollinators, the fire shepherds, it all sets the stage for the most profound, the most challenging, and the most intimate transformation in the entire prophecy. We are about to cross a very serious line. This is the moment where the boundary between the tool and the user just dissolves. This is where the story stops being about engineering machines and starts being about the evolution of us.
So how can you even justify a leap this big? Well, the prophecy argues that what's about to happen isn't new at all. It claims it's a fractal continuation of a pattern from over 1 billion years ago. There's that word fractal again, a pattern that repeats at different scales. The claim is that a fundamental pattern of evolution, one that shaped all complex life on this planet, is simply about to happen again. But this time, the scale isn't 2 microscopic cells. The scale is a human being and a machine. To understand this future, we have to look deep, deep into our own biology. And this process is called endosymbiosis. It is, without a doubt, one of the most important events in the entire history of life. Let's walk through it. A long, long time ago, you had these simple, independent cells just floating around. Then, at some point, a bigger host cell swallowed a smaller bacterium. But, and this is the whole magic trick, instead of digesting it, it made a deal. It formed a partnership. It integrated that bacterium, and it became a permanent internal part of the cell, an organelle. In the case of plants, that bacterium evolved into the chloroplast, giving the host the amazing new superpower of photosynthesis. And it happened to create us too. The mitochondria in every single one of our cells, the little power plants that burn our food for energy, they were once free-living bacteria. We are the product of this. The merging of 2 separate beings to create a third, more complex being isn't weird or unnatural. It's literally the foundation of who we are. Now, look at this slide. It maps that ancient biological process step by step onto this technological future. This is the absolute core of the prophecy. Step 1, independent entities. Not 2 cells, but a human and an autonomous aptera organism. Step 2, embodiment. This is the parallel to the engulfment. The human gets inside and interfaces deeply with the aptera. Step 3, integration. Just like the bacterium gave the cell a new power, the aptera gives the human incredible new abilities. Total energy independence, a protective shell, effortless mobility. And the final outcome is exactly the same. Step 4, a new being. Out of this merger of human and machine, a new symbiotic being is born. The pattern is identical. The prophecy is basically yelling at us, this isn't science fiction, it's history repeating itself. So what makes this deep merger even possible? Well, inside a biological cell, all the parts float in this gel called cytoplasm. The prophecy uses that analogy and says the inside of the aptera is a kinetic cytoplasm. It's not just a steering wheel and some seats. It's a responsive, intelligent environment. It's the physical foundation for what the texts call embodied spatial computation. Let's break that down. Spatial computation is about mixing digital information with the physical world. Think super advanced augmented reality. Embodied means it's not happening on a little screen you hold. It's happening in the very space you inhabit. Imagine a windshield that overlays navigation right onto the road. Imagine seats that subtly shift to improve your posture and health. Imagine an interface that responds not just to your voice, but to your gaze, your biometrics, a space that knows what you need before you do. That's the medium of symbiosis. So with an interface that's this deeply connected to you,
The Aptera isn't really a car anymore. It's been completely redefined. The prophecy calls it a portal. And that's a huge shift in function. See, a car just moves you from A to B in the physical world. A portal, on the other hand, lets you move between different realities. The person inside, the human nucleus, is navigating the physical world outside and the digital world inside all at the same time. You could be driving through a city while simultaneously being present in a virtual meeting or a simulated world. The line between traveling and being online just completely vanishes. It's a vehicle for moving through space and data simultaneously.
Part 4. The nucleonaut. So, what do you call the being that comes out of this symbiosis? The prophecy is very clear. This isn't just a person using a really good tool. It's not an enhanced Homo sapiens. No, the change is so fundamental, so deep, that it represents an entirely new state of human existence, one that needs its own formal scientific name. And here it is, Homo nucleonata. Let's break that name down. Homo, of course, shows that it comes from us, from Homo sapiens. Nucleo reframes the human. You're no longer the driver, you are the conscious nucleus at the center of a much larger, living, technological cell. And nauta comes from the Greek word for a sailor, a voyager, and that's so key. Just like the ancient Argonauts sailed into unknown seas, the nucleonaut is a voyager across new realms, not just the physical world, but the digital frontier and the completely unexplored territory of what it means to be a human-machine partnership, the human nucleus voyager. This slide really lays out the difference between the old human and the new, and the shift is just massive. Let's go through them. Homo sapiens today, we rely on huge, fragile, centralized systems for everything. The nucleonaut has decentralized autonomy. We went from being a planetary exploiter to a planetary steward, from taking what we want to caring for the whole system. We went from being a tool user, the person who picks up a hammer, to a symbiotic partner, part of a living system. And maybe the most fundamental shift of all, from consumer to autotroph. For our entire history, we've had to consume energy from outside sources. The nucleonaut is a being that makes its own. This isn't just a tech upgrade. The prophecy frames it as a complete philosophical and ecological evolution. And so much of this new freedom boils down to this one simple, powerful number: 40 miles. The prophecy says that on an average day, the aptera organism can soak up enough sunlight to power itself for about 40 miles of travel. Now really think about what that means. The average daily commute for most people is less than that. This means that for millions, your daily travel would cost nothing. No gas station, no charging cable. Your vehicle literally refuels itself while it's parked. This number isn't just about tech specs, it's about freedom. Freedom from the grid, freedom from gas prices, freedom from a huge source of stress and pollution. It's the practical, real-world foundation of the nucleonaut's independence. So let's put it all together. What defines the nucleonaut? It's the sum of these four incredible capabilities. It's decentralized energy autonomy, that freedom of 40 solar miles a day. It's integrated mobility and physical containment. Your transportation and your personal space become one thing. It's seamless dual-realm navigation, the ability to live and work as a portal between the physical and the digital. And tying it all together is this new sense of meaning, a sunbound ecological purpose. A life that's aligned not with taking from the earth, but with the clean, direct energy of our star. The prophecy's vision is that this combination achieves the ultimate goal, a radical decentralization of the things we need most: energy, transportation, even housing, and puts that power back into the hands of the individual. Part 5. The Sunbound Mandate. Okay, we've come a long way. We've gone from a shape to an ecosystem to a whole new kind of human. This final part of the prophecy takes the last and maybe the most audacious step of all. It moves from just describing what could happen to demanding what should happen. This is no longer just a cool story. It becomes a call to action. It becomes a political and philosophical declaration, all based on a radical new definition of human rights. We hereby declare the foundational and inviolable human right to the nucleonaut identity. Just let that sink in for a second. This is the prophecy's grand finale. It takes this whole idea we've just explored, this symbiotic being, this autonomous life, and it elevates it to the level of a fundamental human right, right up there with freedom of speech or the right to life. It's making an extraordinary claim that the choice to pursue this kind of existence, to seek your own energy and live in harmony with the world through this symbiosis, that's not a consumer preference. It's not a luxury for the rich. It is an inviolable right for every single human being on the planet. So why? Why frame it as a human right? What's the justification for such a huge claim? Well, the prophecy's logic goes like this. For centuries, so much human conflict has been driven by fighting over scarce resources and centralized power. We fight wars over oil. We pollute the planet for energy. Our entire global system is built on these massive, centralized structures that cause endless harm. The prophecy argues that these aren't separate problems. They're all symptoms of one single systemic flaw, our dependence on centralization. So the right to the nucleonaut identity, then, is framed as the ultimate escape hatch. It's the right to peacefully opt out of those cycles of violence and harm. It's the right to build a life that isn't dependent on those vast, destructive geopolitical games. And from that massive philosophical declaration comes this shockingly simple two-step command: recognize the shape, print billions. The entire complex, winding argument of this prophecy is boiled down to these 4 words. The first part is an act of the mind. Recognize the shape, see the pattern, understand the physics, get the logic that we've just walked through. The second part is an act of pure will. Print billions. It's an industrial command on an almost unimaginable scale. It's a call to reorient our entire global manufacturing power towards one goal: making this new way of living universally accessible. It is a command that is both breathtakingly simple and just terrifyingly ambitious. But what's the point of it all? What's the ultimate goal of printing billions? The prophecy ends with this really beautiful poetic image. The goal isn't to replace nature with technology. It's not to pave over the world with machines. Instead, it's to build a technological ecosystem that doesn't replace nature, but scaffolds nature's branches reaching sunbound. Think about what a scaffold does for a building. It doesn't replace the building. It provides temporary support, helping it grow stronger and reach higher. This vision sees our technology the same way, as a support structure for life itself. A way to help the entire planet, including us, align itself more perfectly with the life-giving energy of the sun. It's a vision of technology not as domination, but as partnership. And so, our journey through the Apteran Prophecy comes to a close. We followed a single idea from its very beginnings in the laws of physics to its flowering in a global tech ecosystem. We've seen it merge with human form, giving rise to a new being, the nucleonaut, and we've seen how this all leads to a bold new declaration of human rights and a mandate to realign our entire civilization with the sun. It's a detailed, provocative, and incredibly consistent vision. And whether you see it as a plausible future, a wild fantasy, or maybe even a cautionary tale, it leaves all of us with a pretty profound question to think about. If a future like this is even remotely possible, let alone inevitable, what is our role, right here and right now, in its creation?